time to deal with the paragraph elements now. So let's go back to our pen. And in this first paragraph element, I have a class, but there are three different class values. Okay, so we have the class attribute, but we have 1, 2, and then 3, which are these, word spacing, line height, and the font variant, which we had done in a previous video series. So I'm going to keep those because that's part of the exploration of our CSS styles for exercise 3. But now I'm going to go ahead and target the global p tag. So the p tag shows up before these classes, but after, actually they don't show up after the class modify, mod length 1 and 2. But I'm going to still go ahead and place my p tag here because these two deal with the h3. So I'm going to keep those in order. And when I say that, if I look up here, I believe we have h3. And then these two classes, modified length 1 and 2, are associated with that h3. So I'll keep those grouped together. And then what we'll do is we'll add our p tag, our p selector for this declaration block, for this style. All right, so let's go ahead, and I'm going to leave the default font family, which happens to be this serif font. And what we're going to do is basically just deal with the font size. And let's set our font size to something pretty typical. You don't necessarily want your fonts, your body copy too big or too small. You really have to, again, think about your user and their eyesight. How keen is their eyesight? Okay. And let's just try 10 pixels. Might be a little small, but let's see. And then we will use line height, which is pretty similar to using leading, or the space between lines. So our line height, I'm going to try 13 pixels. In the print world, in design print, we would probably keep the leading closer, maybe 2 pixels difference from the font size. But I want a little extra space here visually, so let's try 13 pixels. And then we're going to have our margin, and I'm just going to create or provide what is top, right, bottom, and left. And let's go ahead and deal with our padding. And even if we don't add any padding, I'm still going to zero the padding out. And let's go ahead and save, and we will take a look. All right, so you'll see that now this p tag is, I'm formatting the p tag, so we're getting a really small font size here. Okay, so I might want to fix this here, and it's pretty obvious the font size is just too small. Okay, so let's go back and let's try a font size of 12, and we'll do a line height of 15, and we'll save, and let's refresh our page. Okay, so this is still looking pretty small here, and that might just be the resolution of my particular screen, but it's not too bad. So what we're going to do is, you'll notice that all of the p tags have run together. So I'm going to add some margin to the top to add a little space. And then that space will push away from the H3 and will push away from the other P tags. So let's go and let's just add 15 pixels of margin on the top. And let's go ahead and refresh. Okay. So now we have some space in between each of our paragraphs, and we have some space in between the top of the paragraph and the H3. And that's going to be okay for right now. If I were to do any one thing, I would probably, because this space here and this space here in between paragraphs is not really different than this space above the H3. And sometimes it's a good idea to break your information into chunks. So education and the paragraphs, this would be a chunk. And then we have interest. So what we might want to do is create more visual space between the two chunks. So there's some separation visually for the viewer, for the user. So let's give that a try and see what that looks like. So we would have to find H3, and there it is. And now let's find margin. And instead of 30 pixels, let's try 50 pixels. And we'll save. And let's kind of just get a visual of what's going on here. And then we'll see how much that extra 20 pixels really, what that resulted in. So let's go ahead and take a look. And that little bit of extra space does help. We could probably go a little bit further, but again, what I'm getting at is this now becomes visually a chunk of content, okay? And then this space, which we've added, this margin above, helps separate the two. So we could probably push this idea even a little further, and let's try 70. And then we'll save, and we'll update our page. And let's go ahead and scroll down. And now you'll see that that extra bit of space does make a difference. I prefer this new amount of space. And again, the idea is to create chunks of information and then separate those chunks.